Okay, I am going to get started and introduce myself. So, good afternoon to those of you who have joined. My name is Jennifer Clayton. I am the Attorney Wellbeing Program Manager for the New York State Bar Association. And what the Attorney Wellbeing Program is a program really working to focus on the balance for lawyers in the legal field, navigating these stressors. Each month, the Attorney Wellbeing Program highlights a different pillar of wellness, July being the social wellness pillar. So today I am so grateful to have Lori Mihalich-Levin joining us from Mindful Return. And you'll note that the social wellness pillar, from NISBA's perspective, really looks at our social supports, and that includes working parents. So I'm just going to introduce Lori here. Lori believes in empowering working parents. She is the founder and CEO of Mindful Return, author of Back to Work After Baby, How to Plan and Navigate a Mindful Return from Maternity Leave, and co-host of Parents at Work podcast. She is also the co-chair of the inaugural DC chapter of Postpartum Support International. Lori is mama to two wonderful redheaded boys, ages 10 and 12, and I do believe we get to see some photos in the presentation today. She's also a healthcare lawyer in private practice. Her thought leadership has been featured in publications including Forbes, The Washington Post, New York Times Parenting, and Thrive Global. And I will plug the Attorney Wellbeing Program. The August pillar is Intellectual Wellness Month. So if anyone's looking for a book, it looks like Lori has an option for us. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Lori. Thank you.
Wonderful, Jen. Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. It's good to be here with all of you today. I'm Lori Mihalich-Levin. I'm sitting in my office in Washington, D.C., although I will note that I did take the New York Bar way back in the day, so I have that connection to New York State Bar Association. I know that people are doing other things and it's lunchtime and all that, so cameras on, cameras off, totally up to you. At the end of our time together, I would love to see your smiling faces as we have a conversation in the last couple of minutes of this conversation. I would also love if you would hop into chat right now and just let me know the ages of any small people who may be under your care. Also, throughout the entire conversation, if you have specific questions, please feel free to pop them into chat or Q&A, or send them to me or send them to Jen, and I'll be sure that we address them during the conversation. So please do hop over into chat. I would love to know where you're joining from today and the ages of your kiddos, presuming that you are in fact a working parent and that is what brought you to this conversation. 10, 8, and 4, Orange County, New York. Thank you, Ashley. Let's see. Anybody else able to hop into chat? 14 months. Congratulations, Leah. You've got a little one in Westchester County. Excellent. Anybody else? Okay, I'm going to get started. You can keep popping stuff into chat. 8, 5, and 21 months in New York, New York. Wonderful, Michelle. Great. Yeah, and so we are also, forming community here. You should write down the people's names and find them and commiserate about parent-related challenges. Okay, so I'm going to do a screen share. We will pray to the screen sharing gods. Hope that works. Looks like Jennifer's giving me a thumbs up. Okay, awesome, Jen. Thank you. So today's conversation is going to be about ways to reduce guilt, burnout, and overwhelm in working parenthood, which is, I know, a goal that we all aspire to. And the foundational place that I think we start in reducing guilt and burnout and overwhelm is in connection. Today, I'm going to be walking through 5 different ways to reduce guilt, burnout, and overwhelm, with the fundamental key being connection to other people. And just to sort of introduce you to me and to why the heck I'm the one talking about all of this, I got very interested in the whole working parent world, the personal and professional identity shifts that I was going through whenever I went back to work after having a baby for the first time. This is probably the very first photo of me as working parent. And then, I brought my little cherub to the office to share him with my colleagues. And I found it challenging to go back to work after parental leave. And I went back full time and did, healthcare policy work. And then I had another baby 2 years later. And my husband and I like to say that 1 + 1 = 85 in our household. This is the second little guy. And with him, I am certain that I had some undiagnosed postpartum anxiety. I really, really struggled with that transition. And I wanted to do something in support of working parents to make their journey through working parenthood a little less isolating and depressing than mine was. So I wound up creating Mindful Return 9 years ago to support working parents through this transition. I wound up writing the book Jen mentioned called Back to Work After Baby that you can find on all the usual places one finds books. And I became a serial founder of working parent affinity groups and ERGs, both at a trade association and at Denton's, where I was a partner up until about 2 years ago. I should have said that I've done the associate at a firm thing. I've done the policy person at a nonprofit trade association thing. I did the partner at a law firm thing. And then 2 years ago, I pivoted and have a solo practice where I practice law as my side gig in about 10% of my week and run Mindful Return in the other 90%. Yes, my boys are no longer that tiny. They are 10 and 12 years old. Turns out they actually appreciate one another's company. They were separate for a week at different camps. And when they reunited, it was like long lost friends. So it's nice to see them together. Okay, on to the meat of today's conversation. I said that there were going to be 5 things that we focus on in order to reduce burnout and guilt. And those 5 here are connection and reconnection. That's to our friends and colleagues and peers and families. Language. The way we talk to ourselves in our own head really matters. And the way that we talk to other people in these conversations really matters. Some practical time management strategies, because you can't have a presentation about working parenthood without talking about time management. Boundary setting conversations, because if we are in relationship with other people, we necessarily need to figure out how to create appropriate boundaries. And then managing energy in order to manage time. I say I'm an introvert leaning ambivert. So if it's a spectrum, right, I'm in the middle, but leaning toward the introversion. And if I want to be able to connect and reconnect with those around me, I need to be able to have the right energy to be able to do that. So we're going to walk through these 5. I'm going to go at pretty much a lightning pace here. You can have these slides afterwards. So, feel free to take notes or not, screenshots or not, but you can have the slides. And please, please hop into chat with any comments or questions along the way. Okay, so stop number 1, tools for connection and reconnection. In the pandemic, I, along with many of my peers, definitely felt ridiculously isolated. We were home for 15 straight months with our kids while they did homeschool, and that was not pretty. And although things feel a lot more normal now, I do think that there are lasting effects of what happened to us in the not so recent past. Now, when psychologists study trauma and they study how we come out of difficult periods in our lives, the question is, how do we bounce back from these things? We bounce back from these things with resilience, which is the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, etc., like a global pandemic. But how do we get that resilience? Well, the key to, and this is covering up so I can't say something, and building resilience, is connection with others who can validate, empathize, and understand our feelings and experiences. So the number 1 most helpful way of making ourselves more resilient is that connection to other people. With whom should we be out connecting? I'm a lawyer. I like boxes. I'm going to show you a couple of grids, today, and I love categorizing things. And my husband, who wrote a book called Relationships to Infinity, had this chart that he created. And I would encourage you, I'd invite you to pause here and think about one person that you would put in each of these boxes whom you would like to reconnect with. That might be another working parent. It might not be. It might be someone in your world. But right now we're going to look here, current ties and strong ties. These are people with whom you have tight relationships and with whom you are actively in touch. Maybe you're actively in touch with someone, but you haven't reached out to them in the past couple of weeks and you sort of miss having their voice on the phone line or whatever that is. Take a moment, jot down their name, put them on your list of people to reach out to. Strong ties and dormant ties. Strong dormant are people with whom you have had a close relationship, but you have lost touch. Think about your law school experience. Think about your undergraduate experience. You might have been super tight with some people. Maybe you traveled with them. Maybe you took the bar exam with them. I don't know. When's the last time you reached out to some of those people with whom you were super close? Think about, write down the name of someone you would like to get back in touch with in that category. Next quadrant down here, we've got the current weak ties, acquaintances with whom you are in touch. Maybe there's someone in your neighborhood, the parent of a kid who's friends with your kid, who you don't know really well, but you think, I might actually enjoy hanging out with them if I, reached out, or maybe we could go for a walk. Think about somebody who would go in that category. And then the dormant weak ties, acquaintances with whom you have lost touch, right? So these are the people who you might be connected to on LinkedIn, right? The 75 people you went to college with, but weren't super close with, or maybe from your first job out of law school. And think about who from that category would be someone you would want to get back in touch with. Now, presuming you have maybe 4 different people in mind, or you could come up with 4 different people, I suspect you'll be sitting here with just a few excuses as to why you aren't going to reach out to them in the coming weeks. And I'm going up, yes, this is the infinity symbol because we want our relationships to continue on to infinity. Okay, so, shoot, I'm missing a slide. The slide is called the Bermuda Keep in Touch Triangle, and the Bermuda Keep in Touch Triangle is where our intentions to reconnect with people go to die. And so I'm sorry that the slide isn't here, but the slide talks about guilt, worry, and fear as the 3 things that hold us back from reaching out to people. Guilt being, it's totally my fault. I should have been in touch for the past 5 years, and then I lost touch and I didn't, and blah, blah, right? Okay, worry. What are they going to think when I reach out to them? Like, maybe they're going to have some weird impression of me. I don't know. And fear, anything could happen. What if they don't want my email? What if they ignore me? All of those things. So how do we overcome the Bermuda Keep in Touch Triangle? First, you have to know that the Bermuda Keep in Touch Triangle is going on in your head. You have to hear yourself go, what are the reasons why I'm saying I'm not going to actually act on that desire to reach out? Then set mini goals to form habits. This is maybe saying every Friday morning, I'm going to reach out to somebody just to say hi who I haven't reached out to in a long time, right? So that's like a teeny tiny baby step that you can calendar and even have somebody hold you accountable for. Journaling about the most likely scenario is helpful. In the anxiety literature, there is a wonderful game that I use in parenthood all the time called Best, Worst, Most Likely. The Best, Worst, Most Likely game is where you completely go crazy on the best thing that might happen, the worst thing that might happen, and then the thing that's likely to happen. So, okay, let's do an example here. I am worried about reaching out to this person who used to be a client of mine, right? The best thing that might happen if I reach out to them and say, hey, it's so good. I was thinking about you and I wanted to get back in touch. The best thing that might happen is they say, oh my gosh, we haven't worked together in so long. I've got a boatload of work to give you. The worst thing that might happen is that they call me up and say, I never wanted to work with you and you were a horrible lawyer whenever we worked together. And then the most likely scenario is that they'll respond perhaps via the same method of communication I used to reach out to them. And they'll say, hey, it's so good to hear from you. Let's pick up a Zoom conversation, right? Most likely. Also, think about reconnecting with people with gratitude and memories and nostalgia. People love when you hear a song on the radio and then you think of someone with whom you heard that song and you reach out to them and say, hey, I just heard this song and it reminded me of you. Okay, so for the parents here who have school-age children, and for those of you who have little ones, because you might be sending them to either a childcare center or maybe to a nanny share, go to the parent gatherings. I know you don't want to hear this because time is precious and we don't have a lot of margin in our day to just BS with other parents. I get that. And I have learned to be more intentional about those parents who are hanging out there. They know things. They are sources of information about what the heck is going on in my kid's school. They're going to be able to help me out on coming up with summer camps and all the things that a parent needs to know. So especially as we're going into a new school year this fall, take the time to do a little lingering at drop off and pick up and nurture the relationships of the people who world. Okay, I want to pivot to connecting and reconnecting with our own children. one of the most effective tools I have found for having my children take seriously the idea that I am listening to them is that I pick up a pen and paper and a notebook and I ask them a question and I write down what they say. Like, it's almost magic. They truly tune into the conversation. They know that you are listening. And one great tool for dinner conversations that I have found is this Q&A a day for kids book, which we use for 3 years straight. Every day there's a question just to ask and talk about as a family, and you can write down each person's answer. And then the questions come up every year, so you get to see them year over year and see your responses. We went through the 3-year journal, so now we've moved on to this 5-year Q&A journal. But just I found that when you get into a rut around perhaps dinner conversation, this can be a good way of shifting yourselves out of it. It's something that kids look forward to. It's something we look forward to. And it gives us a little record of, how our family has developed. In terms of conversations with your family, if your kids are of an age where you can have thoughtful conversations about the past and the future with them, I know 14, 16 months might be a little young for that, but I'm sure that there are ways to adapt it. Sit down as the summer ends and pull out that pen and paper so that everybody's taking one another seriously, and ask your children 3 questions. What did you most enjoy about the summer? What is one specific favorite memory you have of the past couple of months? And what is one thing you hope to do next summer? And this type of connection really inspires conversations, one, to reflect on what you just experienced, but also to put a pin in the fact that, yeah, the school year is about to start and things might get chaotic and you might not actually want to go back to school. My children told me that there's no way to have a smooth back to school transition, and that the idea that there could be a smoother back to school transition is stupid. So, take that for whatever it's worth. But I do think that putting a pin in next summer can give them the idea that like this happy summer carefree time will come around again. As you're connecting with school-age children, I'd also urge you to bring intention into this next school year over the next couple of weeks. So pause, take out that pen and paper again, take some notes, and you can even put these notes up, on a sticky somewhere so that people can see them as the school year starts to roll out. And one question to ask is, what are some words that describe how you hope the next school year will feel? We're setting an intention for this word storm activity. Second is, what's one thing you love about the school year? It's fine if what they love about the school year is winter break, okay, but it might be something on the playground or a particular subject. And then number 3, what is one thing you hope can happen this school year? And then set your eye on trying to figure out how to make that thing happen. Okay, so we're talking about connecting with people outside of our family, connecting with our family. When we are talking to ourselves and talking to others, I am also a huge believer that the words that we use, I'm a lawyer, you're lawyers, we all believe in the power of language, it really matters. Okay, so here's an example. When we say to someone, I don't have time to do X, and I understand, like we all can't fit everything in, what we really mean is this thing that we're talking about is not a priority. Okay, so case in point from Laura Vanderkam, time management guru, author of the wonderful book, 168 Hours. She writes, and I'm going to read this because it's a good one. I could tell you that I'm not going to sew my toddler's Halloween costume because I don't have time, but that's not true. I have time. In any given week, I have 168 hours. If someone offered to pay me $100,000 to hand sew a Halloween costume, you can bet I'd find the time to do it. Since that's not going to happen, I can acknowledge that I don't think sewing is as good a use of my 168 hours as writing or playing with my children, or for that matter, sleeping. So let's be a little bit more intellectually honest about what we're saying about the uses of our time and what we're prioritizing. Laura Vanderkam also wrote this wonderful book called Juliet's School of Possibilities, in which she writes, expectations are infinite, time is finite, you are always choosing, choose well. I think it's just a good mantra for thinking about what we're prioritizing and how we can frame it. About 8 or 9 years ago, in this whole language department, I decided that the word busy made me feel awful. And it was a badge of honor around the law firm where I worked, and everybody's busy, busy, I want to be more busy. And that just got me stressed out every day. And so in the category of reducing guilt and tension and stress in my body, I eliminated the word busy from my vocabulary. Now, did it actually change the things that were happening in my day? No, Did it change the perspective I have on my life and how things are happening in my day? Yes. I replaced the word busy with full, active. My husband and I have a joke that is, we look at each other when things are just flying around like crazy and we say, we're not bored, which is a very different framing from, oh my gosh, I feel busy and I can't handle it. There are also language shifts that we can make in our own heads and when we're talking to other people that are focused on and based in gratitude. One of those is have to get to. I have to go pick my kids up from camp at 5 o'clock, so I have to stop this call. I get to go pick my kids up from camp this afternoon and see the smiles on their faces and watch them run over to me. I get to take a break from work and then go back to it later on, right? These are ways we can reframe those things that we're telling ourselves. When it comes to guilt, I also want to encourage you to do another language shift. When the sentence comes into your brain, I feel guilty because, right? I feel guilty that I have to work late tonight instead of being with my kids for dinner, blah, 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 blah. Change that to, I made this decision because I made this decision to work later tonight so that I can be fully present with my kids at their game tomorrow afternoon and my project will be over with, right? So it's a much more empowering way to talk to yourself about the decisions that you're making. Finally, I like shifting from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset when it comes to our language. When you're talking about, this is hopeless, this is insurmountable, I'll never be able to get back in touch with those people from law school. How about this is tricky, this is painful, or my favorite is, this is educational, right? This is teaching me something. There are different ways we can talk to each other. Okay, so we've got some connection, we've got some ways that we're talking to ourselves and others, and now we'll shift into a little bit of the practical time management stuff. I'm in love with time management tips and tricks and strategies, I admit it. But I also want to do it in a grounded way and in a way that allows some flexibility as to what strategies you're choosing. One of my favorites is Daniel Pink, famous author, his concept called the most important task principle. And the most important task, or MIT, is not rocket science. It is very, very simple. And it comes from his Pink Cast, which is like a little mini podcast called A Simple Trick for Getting the Right Stuff Done. So Daniel Pink's most important task principle is that at the beginning of the workday, I think as a working parent, this is particularly important because you never know when you're going to get the call from daycare or camp or your nanny that the child has gotten sick and you don't know what's about to happen. You do the most important task first, according to this principle. So you write down what the most important task of the day is, and you get that done first. And you might be sitting there saying, duh, Lori, I know, of course I do the most important task first. And my question to you is, but do you really? Or are you doing the thing that gives you the quick dopamine hit and you're enjoying crossing it off the list first, right? I know I'm guilty of falling into the, oh, this one looks like I could do it in 5 or 10 minutes, but is it the most important thing? So consider what you're doing first. This is probably my all-time favorite, and many of you, I'm sure, have heard of the Pomodoro method, but it has saved me in working parenthood over and over again. If you are losing focus, if you need to really concentrate on something, if you can't stand what you're doing and want to know that there's an end in sight, use the Pomodoro method. The Pomodoro method is based on the Italian Pomodoro tomato that's pictured here on the kitchen timer that goes click, click, click. You don't have to have this particular device in your kitchen. You just need to have a timekeeping device. And the idea is that you work on one project, with all of the things that ding at you, email and social media and all the emails that are coming in, for 25 minutes, right? You set the timer for 25 minutes, you do that one thing, and then you take a 5-minute break. And it's called doing a Pomodoro, and you can do a series of these. I think the literature says a series of 3 Pomodoros is the most effective, and then a longer break. Your mind will wander while you are doing your Pomodoro. You'll think, oh shoot, I forgot to write that email to so-and-so, and oh man, I wonder what's going on with my kids. So you write down a little note to yourself about what it was that your mind was wondering about, and then you direct yourself back to the task at hand and repeat. I love using the Pomodoro, not just for work, but for life in general. So if the kitchen is a freaking nightmare and I don't want to deal with all of it, but I know that some of it needs to get done, I will do a Pomodoro, or maybe even just a 10-minute block, right? To say, I will address the egregious parts of the kitchen right now for this 10-minute period, and then I will move on and ignore it for the rest of the time. Why does something like the Pomodoro method work? Cal Newport, who's a wonderful author, he wrote this book called Deep Work. He explains in Deep Work that something like the Pomodoro method works because it saves you from having to mentally litigate again and again and again what you should and shouldn't be doing in your day. So give it a try. I am also a huge fan of something called brain dump list making. Now, on your brain dump list making list right now, you should be putting reach out to the 4 people in the quadrants Lori said to reach out to, right? So we want to put the habit of connection and reconnection into this list making. But I find it super helpful once a week to sit down and just dump everything out of my brain onto a sheet of paper, put it into buckets, right? The school bucket, the kid bucket, the parent, whatever, you know, the home bucket, the work bucket, and just get it all out of the spiraling prefrontal cortex. And then once you dump everything out of the brain, it can help to categorize the things on the list into buckets. I said I love the buckets. We're back with a couple more. There's something called the Eisenhower matrix pictured here, which other people call the Stephen Covey matrix. I think Stephen Covey may have organized General Eisenhower's principles and put them into a pretty grid. But the concept here really is around things that are important or not important, and urgent and not urgent. So the bucket here of important and urgent things, this is the stuff we all get done every day anyway, right? Like we just do the things that we know need to get done. Not going to talk about that bucket. The bucket over here, important but not urgent, this is the most underused and most important bucket, right? This is the category of things that don't have a deadline. There's no deadline on reaching out to your weak tie, right? Or your dormant weak tie. There's no deadline on picking up the phone and calling that friend who you want to talk to. But they are the most important things. There's no deadline on maybe writing an article for a professional publication that's going to help your career, or on reaching out to a particular prospect who you might want to become a client. Those things are not urgent, but they are so important to helping ourselves evolve in our personal and professional lives. Now, what is the solution to this bucket? The solution to this bucket is planning. And I would add getting an accountability buddy for the plan. So it's a matter of putting on the calendar, again, that time slot maybe on Friday morning when you say you're going to do that thing, and then tell someone, I'm going to do this thing on Friday morning. Can you help hold me to it? All right, let's move down to the bottom part of the grid here. We've got the things that are not important, but are urgent, or rather, I'd say they purport to be urgent, right? So things that flash at you and make you think that you have to deal with them right away, even if it's not actually urgent that you deal with them right away. Often text messages fall into that category. The solution to this particular bucket is to postpone and batch, right? So to say, I'm going to respond to all the text messages at a certain time at the end of the day, for example. Okay, so we've got the last bucket here, which is a great one. It's the things that are not important and not urgent, and those we simply eliminate from our to-do list. So think of things that are not important to your life. They don't advance any goals that you have in mind. They don't have any urgency to them. They can be put off. All right. Another tool and strategy that I have found super helpful in working parenthood that has really helped to develop a close connection between me and my partner in this wild and wonderful parenting journey that we are on is the practice of having a weekly meeting. And I know it sounds business-like, it doesn't have to be. My husband and I have like a hot date on the couch every Saturday night, and we consolidate the week's chaos into one spot using, initially we used this thing called the Saturday basket, which was literally a basket on top of the microwave. This is the microwave at my old house. And the Saturday basket concept, where you're putting everything from the week that you don't want to deal with during the week and saving it for a specific time, answers the problem that Cal Newport describes as the ability of incomplete tasks to dominate our attention. So I'm not sure about you, but I can probably think for a total of 15 minutes today about a task that might take me 30 seconds to complete because it keeps reappearing in my brain over and over and over again. If that task has a parking lot, like the basket, then it doesn't keep looping around in your brain. And if you agree to tackle something like the basket together as a couple, if you're in a partnered relationship, This is a way for the two of you to sort through the things that need to be done together. It is never too late, I say, to start a weekly check-in habit at your home. We, at our Saturday meetings, we talk about the next week's schedule. We talk about who is on point for childcare if a child happens to get sick, because they do. We talk about a rough outline of food plans. We talk about money once a month, end of month check-in. We schedule exercise. Why do we schedule exercise? Because if we don't put it on the calendar and tell the other person, it doesn't happen. We order all the things we need from Amazon all at once. We fill out the school permission slips and the paperwork and all the paper stuff that comes in. Once a month, we schedule a date night. I'm going to say that again. Connection with other people helps with resilience, right? So if we're going to connect with our partners, we need to do that at a time that is away from our children. So if you are on our babysitter Rolodex, which PS lives on my husband's phone, and yes, consists of both boys and girls because we need to degender caregiving, then you will hear from my husband on a Saturday evening saying, hey, are you available on an upcoming Friday night? Scheduling time alone is really important, I think, particularly as working parents who get burnt out and overbooked with lots of people and touching and everybody coming at you. And scheduling time with friends is really important to us as well. At the end of this touch base, we've also really enjoyed spending a moment talking about the mindful moments from our week, which in other words means, like, what did I not remember to tell you about from the week that put a smile on my face and that I probably do want to share? Okay, I just threw like a ton of time management and other strategies at you. Just let them percolate. Think about which one might be a good one to start with. You don't have to run out and try them all. Okay, let's pivot to our next category here, which is boundary setting. If we are in relationships with anyone, I would argue even in a relationship with ourselves, we need to figure out how to set some good and healthy boundaries. But what is a boundary, you say? A boundary, according to the dictionary, is a line that marks the limits of an area or a dividing line. I've also read a definition around the exchange of energy between two people and how that matches up. So often we think of boundaries as this hard and fast, perhaps draconian thing that we have to put in place in order to maintain our sanity. And I want to reframe that a little bit and quote from Greg McCowan's book, Essentialism, to say that boundaries with other people in other situations are the source of liberation, right? They're freeing. It's freeing when you have a boundary. He writes, this truth is demonstrated elegantly by the story of a school located next to a busy road. At first, the children played only on a small swath of the playground close to the building where the grown-ups could keep their eyes on them. But then someone constructed a fence around the playground. Now the children were able to play anywhere and everywhere on the playground. Their freedom, in effect, more than doubled. I truly believe that boundaries help us to double our freedom. And I am a big fan of the term clear is kind, right? When you're setting a boundary, it is kind to be clear with the other person. So if you're thinking about yourself and the boundaries that you set around work and kids and home and all the things and the in-laws and the whole world, where do you get stuck? I'm not asking you to answer this for me. I'm just asking you to answer it for yourself. I think that there are three possible places that people get stuck around boundaries. One of them is recognizing that you even need a boundary. Maybe you're frazzled and burnt out and doing all the things and never saying no and never drawing any space for yourself, but you don't even realize you're doing it. So that's a good question. The next one is, do you get stuck communicating boundaries to others? So you know that you need a boundary somewhere, but you're not quite sure how to frame it or word it, or you haven't thought of the method of communicating it. Or maybe you know you need the boundary, you've instilled it, you've said, I'm not taking any client calls over dinner with my babies. And then you have trouble enforcing and reinforcing, honoring and reinforcing the boundaries once you have set them. When a partner at a firm calls you up at 7 o'clock while you're in the middle of that time with children and you're having trouble putting back into place an agreement that you had established. Understanding that flexibility is, of course, important and needed. You know, how can we honor and reinforce the boundaries the majority of the time? When it comes to boundaries, my very favorite boundary setting mantra, and yes, I have a boundary setting mantra, is from the wonderful Brene Brown. And she says, I also practice setting and holding boundaries. Saying no is hard when you're trying to please everyone, but it is way easier than feeling resentful. My boundary mantra is choose discomfort over resentment. If you're coming toward me with a PTO sign-up sheet and you see me quickly close my eyes and start chanting, you'll know exactly what I'm saying. So this choose discomfort over resentment idea, I think, is an honest way of looking at boundaries, because it acknowledges that boundaries don't feel comfortable, right? It doesn't feel good necessarily to say, that's not going to work for me. But that discomfort, which, by the way, reduces over time as we practice, is better than feeling resentment. But just be aware that emotions can come up when we're setting boundaries. I want to emphasize in particular one really important nighttime shutdown boundary that is critical to my own mental health and to my ability to have healthy relationships with the people around me, my ability to connect in present and meaningful ways, and that is the nighttime shutdown. Now, why is the nighttime shutdown boundary so important to relationship building and to resilience? It's because if I'm tired and crabby and cranky when I wake up in the morning because I didn't shut down, emotions are contagious in a household and everybody is crabby and upset and whatever. So we're perpetuating a cycle of broken down communication if we're not shutting down and going to sleep. So the things that have helped me when I have struggled with nighttime shutdowns, and I've gotten a real good handle on this for myself over the past couple of years, but it was touch and go and not very good for a while. But what helped me most was first focusing on my why, who am I in the morning if I blow past this bedtime? Number two, declaring a time. My time is 10:25. I don't know. It used to be 10:30, and then I decided I really wanted 5 more minutes just to be able to read more of my book. So it's 10:25 now. Having an accountability partner to help you with that shutdown boundary is really helpful. My husband knows that 10:25 is the nighttime shutdown time, and he doesn't come over and like close my laptop for me, but knowing that I'm a little on the hook to him, just because he knows, is helpful. Having a shutdown mantra can be helpful to people. Complete for the day, or this can wait till tomorrow, something that allows you to turn it off. And then for me, the most helpful nighttime shutdown boundary principle was finding an enjoyable next activity that I looked forward to, so that when I shut down, I wasn't just doom scrolling or surfing social media. So for me, the enjoyable next activity right now is either reading a book in bed or doing a little bit of writing. And those are things that bring me joy and help me to wind down for my day. My final note here about 24/7 availability and boundaries is also from, again, this wonderful book called Deep Work that I would commend to everybody by Cal Newport. He says, people will usually respect your right to become inaccessible if these periods are well-defined and well advertised, and outside these stretches, you're once again easy to find. So part of the relationship building and the communication of boundaries is about being clear and well advertised about where we are and when we're there, and then being available once that period is over. All right, our last bucket here of the 5 different tools and strategies we can use to combat burnout and guilt is managing energy to be able to manage our time. Because no matter how many beautiful time management strategies we put into place, no matter how many people we reach out to feel more resilient and connected, if our energy is completely depleted, none of those things are going to produce positive results. Okay, so when we're talking about mindfulness and energy and centering ourselves, I just want to point out that they're starting kids really young on this stuff. This was my youngest son's welcome to 3rd grade, back to school night schedule, right? And they gave us the daily schedule for the school, and look on here. 1 to 110 is mindfulness. So if our schools are recognizing, based on evidence supported in the literature, that we need some downtime in our day to pause and center ourselves and reconnect if we're going to be able to continue to get up and learn, then we probably need that as grown-ups as well. you'll probably come back to me and say, okay, but I don't have time to sit down for that 10 minutes after the whatever. And no, thank you. It's okay to start small. It's okay to start tiny, particularly as a working parent who has little tiny pieces of margin in your day. The psychology literature says that it takes exactly 17 seconds of holding positive thoughts and feelings for your mind to start a transition from a negative state toward a more uplifted state. We all have 17 seconds. You've spent 17 seconds probably scrolling Facebook already today, right? So we have that small amount of time. Now, what are we doing in that small amount of time that counts as that micro self-care, as that centering? I just wanted to share a couple of my own working parent mindfulness, micro mindfulness practices that have served me so well over the past decade. The first is multitasking my shower. Now, I'm not a huge fan of multitasking in general whenever it comes to two things that require intellect and your actual thinking brain, right? We can multitask folding clothes and talking on the phone, but we can't multitask two things that require thought. Now, your shower, I suspect at this point in your life, you can probably take without putting too much thought into it. And so I'm all cool with multitasking the shower. Now, what do I do to multitask my shower? I came up with an acronym for myself because I was always forgetting that I wanted to use the shower in this way. And my acronym is ISS. The I stands for set an intention for your day while you're in the shower. My intention for today might be get that one work project done because it is looming over you and you just need to knock it out. The intention for today might be when the kids come home from school, just forget about everything for a while and cuddle with them. Or go to bed at 9 p.m. tonight because you are so exhausted. Whatever that intention is, it doesn't matter. It could be you are enough today, no matter what happens. It's something that sort of points your day in a certain direction that you want it to take. The first S stands for stretch. So I do a couple of yoga poses in the shower. And the second S stands for savor, which is that daily gratitude practice, the moment of remembering that I have hot water coming out of my shower and there's food on my table and we're not running around the city looking for toilet paper and our children's school is open in person and hooray, right? What are the things that we can savor today? I'm going to shift over here to pausing, which I think is really helpful for someone who's doing a commute, but also helpful if you're working remotely. So when I worked downtown in Washington, D.C., I would take the metro a couple of stops and then I would get off and I'd have like a 5 to 10 minute walk to my office. And what I did every morning without fail was to pause either on a park bench or I snuck inside a hotel lobby on days when it was snowing or raining. And I turned on the wonderful meditation app called Insight Timer, which is totally free. And I would set the timer for 5 minutes, or I would find a 5-minute meditation and I would just sit there and listen to it. And no one knew where I was, and no small person was attached to any part of my body, and no client was talking to me. And it was just the perfect pivot between home life and putting my head in the game for work that I really, really needed. I have a couple of meditations up on Insight Timer specifically for working parents. So please feel free, if you upload the app, to just look up my name or look up Mindful Return and you'll find some of those on there. I also have some meditations on there for pumping milk, which is something that I did as a new parent for many, many months. If you are working remotely, you can also use this pause in your day, right, to help center and connect to yourself. Before you open your laptop, you don't have to like dive into the chair, open the laptop and dig in, right? You can sit and pause and turn on Insight Timer and take that break right then. I also wanted to put a plug in for farewell and transition rituals, especially when it comes to kids, especially when it comes to the beginning of a school year and drop-offs and things like that. My children definitely went through periods where it was hard for them to separate themselves from us at the beginning of the day. And we came up with this ritual at their daycare that was called Hug, Kiss, Push. My 12-year-old still uses it, which I find really endearing, and I know he'll stop any day now. But we allowed the kids to give us one last squeezy hug, one last squeezy kiss, and a literal push out the door of daycare. Now, the push out the door set them into fits of giggles because normally they are not allowed to push us around, and it physically got them disconnected from our bodies so that we could leave and go to work. So it could be like your kid acts like a butterfly, or maybe if your kid isn't ready for a transition ritual, they're too small, you can create one for yourself, you know, a certain number of kisses or a way that you do things. Okay, another really powerful micro self-care, energy centering practice is this thing called centering in our bodies. I know as lawyers, we often get up in our heads and we think sometimes that our brains are the only parts of our bodies that actually exist, when in reality, there's the whole thing here. And athletes know this really well, right? This woman here who's about to set the volleyball is centering in her body before she sets. This, if you've been to watch a baseball game, and I know the Washington Nationals are my team, but since the World Series, it's been a bit of a sad slog. Whatever, I still like them. If you watch the outfield of a baseball team, everybody takes one step forward right before a pitch is thrown. Why do they do that? To get ready in their bodies. And I would argue that as professional, intellectual, lawyerly athletes, we also need to center in our bodies. So how do we do that? I'm going to do a quick exercise with everybody right here to help you center in your body, and also to help you realize that this can be really, really tiny in time. You don't need a ton of time. This could be right after you've broken up a fight between your kids. It could be right before you go into pickup at the end of the day. It could be right after you got off a call with a very upset and immature client, right? So the first thing you're going to do is to feel your feet on the floor, wiggle your toes around, see what they're touching. Mine are touching the mat under my chair. And just the process of feeling your feet on the floor helps to move your attention from the thinking, swirling thoughts back into the rest of your body. And we're going to take a deep breath in for 4 seconds and out for 6 seconds. And while you're breathing out, I want you to lengthen your head and your neck and your spine straight upward. And I will count you through this once, and then you take another breath yourself on your own count, okay? So you can get in a comfy position, you can close your eyes if you want, and go ahead and take a deep breath in, 2, 3, 4, and out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, on your own count now. And then go ahead and take another deep breath in, deep breath out, and let your breathing return to its normal pace. And just notice whether anything shifted in your body for you. Notice how fast that practice was. Also, teaching this type of practice to your children can help to form a bond and a connection with them. The out breath being longer than the in breath is really what matters here, because it helps to regulate our nervous system. But if you forget the 4 and 6, just remember longer out. And it's something that you can use with them anytime they're getting stressed out. Maybe it's the night before the first day of school, right? And they're all jittery and they're nervous and they're scared to go. You can do 4 in and 6 out. Also for kids, a snow globe can really help. If you take the snow globe and you shake it up and you tell them to tell you when the last flake of snow settles to the bottom, it can be a really calming practice for the kids. I used the centering practice this morning. I was at the allergist getting a allergy testing on my arm, and there were some really painful prick things, and that like 4 in 6 out was super helpful. There's also a 5 senses meditation that you can use. You might have heard of this one before, and this is also a great one to do with kids. Just because it encourages them to use all of their senses. 5 things that you see, and then list out in your head 4 things that you hear, 3 things that you feel, 2 things that you smell, and 1 thing that you taste. Another activity you can do around the dinner table, or just anytime you're stuck in a conversation with your kids. Final energy reminder. I know it's hard to believe this as lawyers, but idleness, says Tim Kreider in Cal Newport's deep work, is not just a vacation, an indulgence, or a vice. It is as indispensable to the brain as vitamin D is to the body, and deprived of it, we suffer a mental affliction as disfiguring as rickets. It is paradoxically necessary to getting any work done. So if we're going to combat guilt and burnout and disconnection, we also need to just stop, right? And breathe and take pauses. I threw a lot of things at you over the past 50 minutes or so. I'm looking at the time here. I'm glad we have about 10 minutes for a conversation. I would love to hear from you in just a moment, and you can either pop into the chat or you can take yourself off of mute, raise your hand, we can have a conversation. What is one thing that you commit to experimenting with? Note, I didn't say that you commit to doing for the rest of your life. I just said to experimenting with that I raised in the past 50 minutes that you think might be helpful in your own working parent journey. So I'd love to hear what that one thing is. If your organization has a working parent or caregiver group, I just wanted to let you know that I convene a group called the Working Parent Group Network, which is the leaders of working parent groups across the country in all different shapes and sizes of organizations. So feel free to pass this link on to the leaders of that organization if they'd like to join. It's a free monthly call. We have about 280 people who all just share ideas on how to run our groups. And then finally, if you are in the midst of a parental leave and return, please don't try to do it alone. Back to the community and connection concept. I wish I hadn't sat crying on the kitchen floor all by myself for so long in early parenthood. We have new group sessions of our program called Mindful Return for new parents returning to work after parental leave, for new moms and for new dads starting on September 11th and on November 6th. So you can find out more about those on our website. And finally, I do a weekly Tuesday tip for working parents over on Instagram that you can follow at Mindful Return. You can feel free to connect with me over on LinkedIn. I'd be happy, just leave a note that you were on this webinar. I'd be happy to connect with you. And you can find out more about our working parent resources at mindfulreturn.com. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. Thank you for showing your face, Michelle. Anybody else who's willing to come on screen, I would love to say hello. I would love to do two things. One, to hear what your one takeaway is, one thing you're going to experiment with. And I would also love to take any questions that you might have or things that are bubbling up for you in working parenthood that you would love to get my or the group's thoughts and consensus on. Michelle, are you volunteering by turning your camera on to say a word or two?
Sure. Well, thank you for the presentation. I actually found a lot of things that you suggested to be helpful. So my first question would be, where can I get your slides? Because I'm going to forget most of that. Will they be posted on the NISBA website, or should I give you my email, your email, so I can get them?
I'm going to email out everyone that's registered for this program a copy of the slides as well as the recording.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'm gonna show this to my husband so we can be on the same page. But I love the Q&A question book. I just like put it on my Amazon cart, and I like the Saturday basket. That's like, as soon as you were talking about that, I was like, that would take so many of these little things that pop in the middle of the day in my head, where I can have a place to put it, because I find it so hard to concentrate sometimes, especially on a day where I'm working from home, that I'm working, but then I'm like, oh, don't forget to do this, don't forget to do this, don't forget to do that. And it's just constant interruption, even though I have no one physically knocking at my door. It's the knocking in my head that's knocking me down, because I'm like, I couldn't focus on what I had to do because I had no place to physically place these tasks. So yes, I want to do the basket. I don't know about keeping the kitchen. It may just be right next to me at my desk.
I was going to say, maybe have a basket at your desk and then a basket at home, and you can consolidate the baskets, right?
You know what? I didn't even think of that. See, okay, I think that's good. That's good.
Yeah. No, we interrupt ourselves constantly. Like, our own brains interrupt ourselves, for sure.
Yeah.
And I love the idea of talking this through with your husband or partner, and finding, it was a game changer for us to find just a weekly time when we could connect. And the origin of our Saturday meeting was that we were always in the struggle of who's on point when the kid gets sent home from childcare, and whose day is more important, and who's in the middle of what. And so on Saturday, we sat down and said, okay, this is more important for me on this day. You take the call if the call comes in, and on, you know, the other day, maybe the next day, his thing was more important. But it was a good way of sort of siphoning off who was responsible for what, knowing that things were going to blow up and go awry, because they always do.
One thing that I don't know if other attorney parents can relate is, I guess in my mind, a lot of times I don't vocalize the struggles I'm going through. I mean, I vocalize it to my husband, so he hears all of it. but I don't vocalize it to any of my colleagues, even the ones that have children, because there's just this, and I don't know, it's just me, but there's just fear of like, as soon as I say, oh, my kid is giving me problem, or, oh, I couldn't do something because I had to go pick up my child, I worry that that's coming off as that you're just using them as an excuse, or you're just pushing off your work responsibility and focusing on family, which I don't know how. I think that we're shifting and we are allowing people to focus on family more, but also there's still this kind of negative thought that, or connotation that you should be putting your work first, because that's what lawyers do. We have to put our clients first, our work first. And a lot of times when there are struggles, I don't tell that to anybody, at least not at work, or disclose that to people who are in my industry, my field, because I don't want them to see me, well, don't work with Michelle because, as soon as something happens to her kid, she drops everything. Well, that is still normal. It's just nobody says that it's normal. Nobody comes out and say like, that's acceptable. So I'm bottling up all this guilt while I'm at work.
Yeah, and I'd ask yourself, is it really true that she drops all the balls and they never return and she's horrible at her job because of it? Like, that's where that line of thinking goes. And the answer is probably not. Maybe you pause things for a moment, but that doesn't mean that you have dropped all the balls and become a horrible lawyer. I will offer a couple of reflections, and then I want to turn over to Dorothy, who's come on camera, and I don't know if you want to say something. I would love to hear from you. My colleague and friend, Mary Beth Ferrante, talks about parenting out loud as a way of normalizing parenthood in our workplaces. And it is hard to be the only one parenting out loud. And I would just put in a plug for normalizing in the appropriate conversations. Maybe it's closed door, maybe it's with a fellow parent, the idea of talking about some of those struggles, because we feel so alone when we think we're the only one doing it. And I would call that a leadership skill, right? I'd say there might be someone else in your office who wants to be able to say out loud that he or she is really struggling because of a parent thing, but they're keeping it to themselves. And they're thinking, this is not a place where I can talk about it. But when one person, when somebody else starts that trend, it can provide a whole level of relief to a whole population. My own personal approach when I was a partner at Denton's was to be very transparent with my colleagues, but with my clients, it was my decision to just say, I'm not available, period, and not really explain. So for me, the line was, I'm going to be fully here, fully present. And I get it. It's easier for me because I'm mindful return person, right? Exactly. And I just want to normalize the fact of those conversations. I get that it's hard. Dorothy, thank you for coming on camera. Anything to share or to ask?
Oh, no. Well, yes, thank you for the presentation. It was really helpful. And it was kind of a surprise to see that the NISBA offered this, and super grateful that they did. I've always found NISBA programming to be great, but this kind of goes beyond. And yeah, so I have a 1.5-year-old daughter, and I'm going to definitely try to come up with some kind of ritual as we leave in the morning, which is the hardest. She has mommy attachment issues at the moment, so like leaving any room is a trauma seemingly to her. So when I walk out the door, like what we do now as it stands is that my husband brings her to the window and like so she can see me leave and go in the car, but like maybe like just like add to that a little bit more. I don't know, like it's hard. I think it's hard for me to break away too in that instance. Like I always want to like hug her for longer, obviously.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for
so
sharing
something there.
Yeah, I have felt that last hug. I'm in a different phase of life now, but I dropped my youngest son off for sleepaway camp for the first time, and I just like didn't want to let go of him.
Yeah.
Because I would.
Yeah.
So I feel that. And
I mean, no, I'm sure it never goes away. Yeah.
Yeah. And knowing that there's that one last hug, last kiss, like that just gives us that moment of knowing that like there's an end and we can move on from it. I see, just to be respectful of everybody's time, we have only a minute left in our hour. I forgot to mention that I do have a weekly newsletter called Saturday Secrets. It comes out every Saturday morning at 6 a.m. because parents 6 a.m. on Saturdays are often awake reading. And it has the week's latest blog post in it, and it has additional resources for working parents every week. So you can go to mindfulreturn.com and sign up for that there. Jen, back over to you as we are at the top of the hour.
Thank you so much, Lori. Again, so grateful that you were able to join us today. And Dorothy, thank you for the feedback. If anyone here has additional topics or themes for programming that they'd like to see from the Attorney Wellbeing Program, I have been with NISBA for 1 year now. We've been slowly building, but I'm really looking to meet the needs of all the members and what is going to truly help balance this very, very stressful career to promote well-being. So thank you all. Thank you, Lori. I will be emailing everyone who registered today with a copy of the recording and those slides. And thank you all. I hope you're able to enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you all. Goodbye.
Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.